Hi guys. So this week we're talking about Jimmy. And in terms of his initial steps, there's sort of three things that I wanted to touch on. But first, with the assessment, I think one of the most crucial pieces in the assessment is observing how Jimmy is with the grandparents. I think there wasn't much information given there. And so in my mind, sort of filling in the blanks, I'm thinking that he probably used to live with his mother at some point. Um, and there's probably a decent amount of chaos that might have happened in that atmosphere. And now that he's with the grandparents, my biggest concern is that he may not, because he didn't spend those first years with his grandparents, likely, there may not be that attachment there, and he might not feel very secure, very comfortable being himself there. And so, with the assessment, I would really want to observe that relationship and kind of pick out what's going on and what that relationship looks like on an emotional level. Um, and then the first thing I would do in terms of initial steps is try and ask more questions with the grandparents in terms of what his life looks like and if there are any routines put in place already. It sounds like the foundation has really been fractured and there isn't a sense of security and a sense of structure for Jimmy, and that's going to be impacting every other aspect of his life. We're learning from our diagnosis class that appetite is really linked with um, just emotional distress, and so it would make sense that the first step that we really need to take is just setting a secure foundation for him. And I think the biggest part of that is adding more consistency in his life. And so right now, the grandparents seem to be his caregivers and the ones that are really reliable. And so unfortunately, like, you can't control a lot of what happens at daycare, and you can't entirely control what happens with the mother, but what the grandparents can do is make sure that there is a lot of consistency when Jimmy's home. And so some things I might suggest is sort of adding like a bedtime routine, or a morning routine, and just having very simple things be the same every single day. And so maybe for bedtime, like Jimmy knows every single night at 7 he takes a bath, and then they read him a story, and then they sing him a song, and then he goes to bed with a specific stuffed animal that's always there that he can rely on, or every night before bed they lay out his clothes for the morning, and so they don't have to rush around in the morning. They know that these are your clothes and this is what you're going to wear, and there's just that sense of like consistency. And Jimmy can learn to expect and rely on certain things. I think that like reliability in his life is just a key factor, considering that his primary caregiver has probably shifted, and that's really traumatic for a kiddo. And then another thing too is just maybe contacting the mom and trying to build some consistency in when she sees him too. Like if she frequently doesn't show up, maybe like lessening the expectation a little bit. Like maybe instead of the whole weekend, you just see her on Sundays, and she can, trying to figure out something there, so that way there is something solid for Jimmy to rely on. And then I think with that, then it'll be a lot easier for everything to sort of like naturally flow in place the same way it would with another child. And so also with the nutrition aspect, obviously there's an emotional piece, but I think something from Rosie's case that I saw is just really emphasizing and respecting the referrals of the physician. And so also emphasizing to the grandparents, like, it is really important for Jimmy to see a dietitian. Clearly his nutrition has gotten to the point where it's significantly impacting him. And so, yeah, just reiterating the importance of going to see the dietitian and getting those things sorted out. Another idea that I had there for consistency, something we do in our house, is that on Sundays we make a plan for the rest of the week in terms of what that's going to look like for our meals, and my husband and I typically do that. But in this case, I think it'd be really beneficial to have Jimmy be a part of that. And so if he does have a favorite food or does have some things that he always eats, he can sort of sit down with grandma and grandpa, and they can ask him, what do you want to eat these days? And he'll have a say in choosing that. And so that will give him some power and some to just have a feeling of like, oh, okay, like I get to have control over this aspect of my life, and that would be a really healthy thing. And then also maybe he loves mac and cheese, and so he knows Wednesday nights he's going to get mac and cheese, and he can be excited about that, and there can be this positive experience around nutrition. And so, yeah, having like planning out all the meals I think would be really helpful. Um, yes, and then the last thing would be to work on the emotional regulation with Jimmy. And the biggest thing I saw in the case is just that the issue is with expression specifically. And so um, that tells me that maybe these emotions aren't really readily available, or the verbiage for those that emotion isn't readily available. And so when we're playing with Legos or maybe dinosaurs, just that's such a 4-year-old boy thing. I don't know a single 4-year-old boy that doesn't love dinosaurs. And so when playing with the characters, you can sort of act out certain emotions, and just go about different activities and maybe express like, oh, um, I'm at the top of a building and I'm really nervous because I'm getting close to the edge. Oh, can I jump off? I don't know. I'm excited. I'm jumping off the cliff. Oh my gosh, I fell and I hit the ground. Like, that really hurt, or whatever. Um, but just act out, give these names for each emotion. And so slowly, hopefully, Jimmy will start to obviously he's 4 years old and he probably has a decent vocabulary, and he knows um, emotional words, but just being able to connect that and readily have those available. And so that way, instead of like feeling this big feeling, and then the only way he can express this is by throwing himself on the ground and screaming and crying, he now knows like, oh, okay, I'm feeling frustrated, and I can use the word for frustrated in order to express that, in order to hopefully get that message across. I don't have to throw myself on the ground. That word is like readily available for me to use. I think that would be like a big piece. But again, and that's emotion regulation. That's something that every kid has to learn. But I think everything does hinge on feeling safe, feeling secure, being comfortable with the grandparents enough to say those things, and have that be well received. And so really, really focusing on that consistency and that relationship first, and then later trying to tackle the emotion regulation piece with Jimmy. Yeah, that's what I got for today.